to. Or Umar, you can do that, right?
I should be able to record from here as well. Let's see. Actually, if you could do the recording, that'd be great.
Oh. There we go. So I see the live sign. I'm assuming we're live now.
I'm live on Facebook. Yep. We're good to go.
Salam, everyone. Hello. Good evening. My name, as usual, is Luna Banuri, and I am the Executive Director for Utah Muslim Civic League, and kind of having my heart palpitate a little faster today. I have my friend and my friends from here, friend from California, and then friends from here in Utah joining in today for a very important topic. Before we delve into the topic, I just wanted to provide perspective as to why we're doing this series. Utah Muslim Civic League is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We recently launched a project by the name of Project Rahma, in which we're trying to provide resources in terms of financial aid and other stuff to our community in response to COVID. And our research clearly showed that one of the needs that we had in the community was around mental health issues. The pandemic, the allied issues that have come around it has all of us in a very uncomfortable position in one way or the other. Some of us handle it well, some of us don't. Some of us are now getting into that phase where we are accepting it. And when we look at Utah to provide perspective in terms of Islamic or Muslim community, we are about at 60,000 people. And we are a minority majority ethnic group. So there's not one single ethnicity that stands out. And then with every ethnic group, with every ethnic sort of culture, there are different ways we look at mental health. And that translates in different responses. But if you look at Utah as a whole, 1 in 5 Utahn every year last year was affected by mental illness or something related. Suicide remains one of the highest or the leading cause of death amongst Utahns. So we constantly are battling. And then when you put that entire conversation in context to our culture, it becomes much more urgent. So I do want to turn this over to Wagma Momand, who recently joined us as the Public Health Associate for UMCL, and also a big shout out to Yasmin and Aisha, who are joining us from out of state. I'll let everyone provide their introductions and jump into the presentation. And then we would have these wonderful ladies who are leading our panel with question and answers. And right after that, we will take audience question and answers. We hope this to be an interactive process. Please feel free to drop your questions, your comments in the chat or in the Q&A box. With that, over to Wagma.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and good evening. My name is Wagma, and as Luna mentioned, I am the Program Associate for the Public Health Committee, and we will be focusing on public health issues within the local Muslim community here in Salt Lake City, with a focus on bridging the gap in health disparities, and this mental health series is one aspect of that. And we will, inshallah, be taking this further and doing various forms of mental health awareness. So thank you for joining us today.
With that, if I can ask Yasmin and Aisha to provide an introduction for us.
Sure. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'll introduce myself briefly and then pass it to Aisha. So my name is Yasmin Irfani, and my background is in college counseling and student services. I work at a mental health nonprofit called the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And through my own personal journey and my own mental health challenges, I've really seen how the concept of self-compassion has changed my life. And I feel as if like Allah has blessed me and given me so much. So it's my job to take care of myself and prioritize my mental health so that I can best serve others. Because I realize that it's not really possible to maximize one's potential if we are neglecting our own selves. So we're really excited to plant that seed and start this conversation on self-compassion with you. And trust me, it works if you have an open mind and you try out some of the tools that we share. Inshallah, it has some benefit. And what's awesome is that this is all based on research too. So there's thousands of studies showing the benefits of self-compassion, which we'll get into. I'll pass it to Aisha.
Hello and salams, everyone. My name is Aisha. I'm based in Chicago. I go by the pronouns she and hers. I am currently working at a nonprofit called Heart, which is a nonprofit that addresses sexual violence in Muslim communities. And on my spare time on the side, I'm a co-founder of an initiative called Venting and Vibing, which just gathers women of color to talk about the unique challenges that they face in the workplace. In both of the settings that I'm in and the work I do, both paid and unpaid, I'm really interested in topics that involve how our own relationships with ourselves. Like Yasmin, my relationship with myself and self-compassion was a very personal journey that I intentionally embarked on about 5 years ago. And alhamdulillah, I've been able to see how really honing in on my relationship with myself and showing myself kindness has transformed my relationships with my loved ones, my family, my relationship with Allah and my spirituality, and the relationship that I have with our community and the work that I do in community. So I'm so honored to be here with you all today and to tune in from a different state, which is the beauty of this virtual world we are currently living in. And inshallah, like Yasmin said, this plants a seed for you, no matter where you are on your journey, to kind of get you thinking about some of these things and it be helpful in your own journey with your self-love and self-care. So I think I'll share my screen now. Let me go ahead and open the ooh, did I start the whiteboard? That is not what I meant to do. Okay, let's see. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, if you just do present mode, that'll be awesome.
Okay. How you present. Perfect. All right. So before we actually get into the content, we wanted to take a poll. Like I said, we want to acknowledge that everybody might be in their own place on their personal journey with self-compassion. So we just want to know, how much do you feel you know about self-compassion? And I think a poll should pop up right now. Yep, there it is. And feel free to fill out an honest answer. There is no right or wrong answer here. We just want to get an idea of kind of the familiarity with this topic with the folks who are tuning in. So we'll give that about a minute. All right, just a few more seconds. It looks like we had 76 people vote already. So I think that's
76%, yeah.
Oh yeah, 76%.
And I was going to encourage the few men that we have, to definitely participate, because we do want the gender balance here too.
Please do.
2 more people, send in your vote. 3, 2, 1, and end.
Perfect. So we can see that most folks kind of fall in the range of knowing some things about this topic. And there are some folks who are kind of seasoned with their self-compassion and practice this a little more. And there are folks that are new to this. And I think this is an awesome place for us to have this conversation with people who are in different parts of our journey, because that is life. It's completely representative of how we interact with each other in life. We're just all on different parts of our journey. All right, so I'm gonna switch to the next slide.
And Aisha, can you do present mode? Because I see it from the whole screen.
Oh, I'm seeing it in present mode. Is everyone else not in present mode?
No, if you just press present, I see it next to the top left share.
Okay, sorry. I have 2 screens at home.
Oh no, see in the top right, the share. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I'm working with 2 screens here. Okay,
have
perfect.
some self-compassion for yourself, Aisha. Okay, great. So real quick, what we're going to go over is what is self-compassion and what is it not? And as I mentioned, this is all research-based and we don't own this work. It's by Dr. Kristen Neff, who is cited at the bottom of every slide. We're going to also go over some of the myths, some tools that we can try out together, and then of course there will be the Q&A at the end. And to start off, I also want to share one reason this is really important for us to invest our time in is because as Muslims, our most important relationships are with Allah and with ourselves. So these 2 relationships influence everything else. It really does start with us at home with ourselves. So when you take care of you, you are indirectly helping everyone around you. So let's talk about self-compassion. The general definition is treating yourself with the same kindness and care that you would show someone you love. So the more that we can be there for our own selves, the greater capacity we have to be present and supportive of others. This is very different from self-esteem, which is defined as the degree to which we evaluate ourselves positively. It represents how much we like or value ourselves, and it's often based on comparison with other people. So self-esteem needs success to prove your self-worth, like getting a job or how much money you make, what grades you get in school. Whereas self-compassion says that no matter what, you are worthy. Your worth does not come from these external things. And our culture has become so competitive where we feel like we need to be special and unique, and even just to be called average can seem like an insult. So we want to show ourselves compassion because we're humans, not because we're special or everything that we achieve. And what's amazing about this is that we don't have to feel better than others to feel good about ourselves with self-compassion. And I also want to share that self-compassion is very different from self-pity. It's not throwing yourself a pity party or feeling like you're a victim, blaming others, not taking responsibility for your life. It's just remembering that we are humans at the end of the day. And we also wanted to share this image from the Khalil Center, which is a great resource to look into because it talks about mental health from an Islamic perspective. And there's different pieces of our health. So we're here with our primarily with our mental health and emotional health, but there's also, we need to take care of our physical health, our behavioral health, which is focusing on our relationships with others. And of course, the spiritual piece is really important. So it's a very holistic approach. And I also wanted to share that it's really, can you go back for a sec? Sorry. When it comes to all these different points of our health, it's really hard to do it on our own. So finding others to support us is really important. Aisha and I are very open about us going through our own therapy and being able to cry and vent and heal whatever we need to do. But it's really hard if we just isolate ourselves and try to figure it out on our own. And there are professionals and resources to help you. So we also wanted to include this hadith, which is that the ones who are merciful, the most merciful will be merciful to them. Be merciful to those who are on the earth, and the one who is in the heavens will be merciful to you. So we may have heard this many times, yet sometimes we forget that we are also part of the creation and we are also worthy of showing that mercy and compassion to our own selves. It's not un-Islamic to talk about these things and get this sort of help. And it's also not an overnight process. This is a lifelong journey. I wish we had a magic pill to just eat and then be able to do all these things. But just a reminder to be gentle with yourself while trying to be gentle with yourself instead of beating yourself up. Okay, so to dig into self-compassion more, there's 3 main ingredients. The first one is mindfulness. So this is a non-judgmental, open state of mind in which we observe our thoughts and feelings as they are, without trying to suppress them or change them or say they don't exist. So it's just noticing them. Because we cannot ignore our pain and feel compassion for it at the same time. So one way that we might see this in our life is even just through the daily prayers or doing dhikr. And then the next piece is self-kindness. So this is being warm and understanding towards ourselves when we suffer or fail or just don't feel good enough. Instead of, one back, please. Thank you, the words are gonna come later. So I do wanna mention that we need to remember that each one of us has an inner critic which says negative things to ourselves. That's just kind of how Allah's created us, to focus on the negative. So if the self-kindness piece sometimes feels hard in the beginning, you can even use this to just make dua or pray to Allah that please help me be gentle with myself. Because we already have been promised that this dunya, this life, is going to have so many obstacles. So we don't need to make it even harder on ourselves by beating ourselves up and not allowing ourselves to feel whatever we feel. And the third piece is connectedness, which is also called common humanity. And I love this one because it reminds us that the very definition of being human is to be imperfect. And if Allah wanted to create us to be perfect, then He would have made us angels. So the connectedness piece is remembering that struggles are part of the shared human experience, something that we all go through rather than just me alone. And some words that might help you identify this are, for mindfulness, it could just be, ouch, this hurts. Or I'm feeling sad. Or, oh, I notice I'm feeling scared. And then self-kindness could sound like, Allah's with me, I can get through this, or I'm just doing the best that I can. And then connectedness could be the part where we say, okay, just like me, other people are struggling too, I'm not alone.
Awesome. And something that Yasmin and I kind of wanted to share with you all is she mentioned how this whole, the mindfulness, the self-kindness, and the connectedness are all part of self-compassion, right? And how all kinds of our health, whether it's behavioral health, spiritual health, all of that is incorporated into self-compassion. So if we look at mindfulness, that's really where our emotional health comes in, just being able to identify how we're feeling in that moment. I'm feeling sad. Ooh, this hurts, like I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm starting to feel angry, whatever it is. Our emotional health, we really nurture that when we're able to acknowledge our feelings. Self-kindness really comes in with our physical health and our mental health, right? What are the thoughts that we're telling ourselves? Our thoughts can be just as harmful to us as harming ourselves physically, right? So tracking our thoughts, being mindful of them is one step, and then ensuring that we're continually telling ourselves positive things so that we can maintain our mental health. And then also how we're treating our bodies, right? Our physical bodies. They're sacred. They're a gift from Allah to do the work that we were put on this world to do. So how we treat our bodies is essential. And then with connectedness, this is where our behavioral health and spiritual health comes in, right? So when we're feeling more full and coming from a place of wholeness, we know that we're able to connect with other people more deeply and authentically, but also that we're able to connect with Allah more deeply as well. Because I'm reading this book called The Secrets of Divine Love, and it talks all about how our relationship with Allah is rooted in love. And really, when we're struggling to have that spiritual connection, those are barriers in the dunya, right, in the world. So if we can uncover those barriers in our heart, it also strengthens our relationship with our spirituality and God. And I will go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I still had one. Okay, so thank you so much for that, Aisha. So let's talk about some of the benefits. Why should you care about this topic? Well, research shows that having self-compassion leads us to have less anxiety, less depression, less burnout and exhaustion. It builds resiliency where we're stronger. It increases our happiness and life satisfaction. We have better relationships with others. And even when we fight with others or have conflict, we're able to manage that in a healthier way. And it strengthens our self-worth. So when we see ourselves in a positive manner, we're able to achieve our goals more and fulfill our potential. And it's not in a narcissistic or arrogant way where, oh, I think I'm just so amazing. It's a healthy sense of self-worth. So because by choosing a merciful response to ourselves and to others, we get to better our relationship with Allah, ourselves, and with others. And self-compassion gives us hope in Allah's mercy, makes us more patient with the failings and mistakes of other people, and it gives us the space to forgive ourselves when we make mistakes, which is something that we're just always going to do, right? So even if you met me 3 years ago, before I took classes and trainings on this topic, if I made a mistake, like getting angry at my stepsister, I might think about it for hours or days and beat myself up. But now through this practice, even if I do that, I can bounce back faster, where I acknowledge it, I apologize, and then I move on with my life instead of wasting so much time and energy criticizing myself.
Awesome. So now we want to talk about some myths about self-compassion. And for those of us who maybe are familiar with this topic or even not, you might have heard of these myths. And we want to make sure before we get deeper into the content, we kind of debunk them right away, right? So the first myth, there's actually 5. And if you Google myths of self-compassion, you'll find it really easily. But we chose to uplift these 3 because they're ones that we commonly heard. Self-compassion means weakness. So oftentimes I heard that there are a few men who are joining in today. Oftentimes we're told that expressing emotions is a weakness, right? And this is particularly told to men, that if you cry, you're weak. If you show emotion, you're weak. But I've also been victim to this, where I've been in a situation, maybe I got hurt by a friend, right? And I thought it was the stronger thing to do to pretend I didn't feel pain. I just like, I don't care, right? And because I thought that if I showed any emotion towards that situation, if I acknowledged that I was hurt, it meant that I was weak, that I cared too much, right? But we know that this is not true. When we're able to, like Yasmin said, we're not able to fully process a feeling or a situation until we acknowledge the emotion that it evokes in us. So to be able to fully process something and to heal from it, we have to even acknowledge that we're feeling that way to begin with. So it takes a lot of bravery, actually, to be able to acknowledge our feelings and say, hey, I'm feeling a little hurt by what you did, or I'm feeling hurt by what this person did. That vulnerability takes a lot of strength to be able to admit to, right? The second one is self-compassion is selfish. So Yasmin touched on this already a little bit. Especially for caretakers, so parents, older siblings, folks who are used to taking care of people in their lives, whether that's a parent, your children, your siblings. It might seem that taking care of yourself and being kind to yourself is selfish because you have so many other things to worry about, right? But if a situation happens, whether we show kindness to ourselves or we beat ourselves up, we're still focusing on us, right? So in that time that we're focusing on us, we get to choose, do we want to be kind, spend the time that I'm focusing on myself to be kind to myself, or do I want to spend that time beating myself up? Either way, I'm spending it on me, right? And then think about the times that you made a mistake or did something you weren't proud of, or snapped at your sister, for instance. When you beat yourself up, did you feel like you were able to return to that situation with your sister, with your child, better, being able to make amends, you know, coming from a whole place? Oftentimes those things make us actually snappier. So when I'm not taking a moment to take care of me, if my nephew's coming in the room and he's running around, I'm not able to step back from myself and be like, oh, that's what kids do, right? And treat him with kindness. I'm more likely to snap on him, be like, Noah, khalas, like, stop, you know? So I think that when we're actually taking care of ourselves, we're able to extend that love and kindness to the people around us, our communities. And again, this goes back to our spiritual relationships. We're able to approach that relationship too with compassion, right? Because as we know, a huge part of Islam is asking for forgiveness, which means ultimately we're gonna mess up sometimes. And then finally, this might be one of the more common ones you've heard, is self-compassion makes you lazy or unmotivated. So I know from personal experiences of mine that sometimes we think that being hard on ourselves or being hard on the people we love means that they'll try harder to do better. But there's actually studies that show that like college students, it was a study on a college campus, and it showed that college students who cheated on an exam, for example, when they were more compassionate with themselves after making a mistake that they weren't proud of, they were more likely to admit to their mistake, make amends, and then not repeat the mistake. So again, we're seeing how showing compassion to ourselves actually allows us to repair relationships and not make those mistakes again. Versus if you're being really hard on yourselves, oftentimes when we're so hard on ourselves, that comes out as defensiveness with people. We'll try to protect ourselves and defend ourselves. And again, that doesn't allow for repair and reconciliation in our relationships or forgiveness, right? Okay, next one. So we actually want you all to take a moment to reflect. We know we've been talking at you a lot, so we want to break it up a little and get you thinking about this topic. We just want you to grab a piece of paper and a pen and journal about a recent scenario when you've made a mistake or you've done something you weren't proud of or snapped on a sibling or child. How did you feel in that moment and what was your reaction to yourself? So we want you to think about, how did you react to yourself in that moment? And again, this is not a place for judgment. We're not going to ask you to share these things. So it's completely private. We want you to be honest with yourself so we can start thinking about the messages we're telling ourselves in these moments when we're making mistakes. So go ahead and take about a minute. I'm going to turn on a timer and then we'll move on.
Aisha, you sure you want me to be thinking alone and doing this? We don't want to do it together. It's the pandemic. We're alone too much. Just kidding.
You know, we could, if you guys want to share.
Everybody wants to.
I could talk about an instance where I was feeling kind of ashamed while people are reflecting, and feel free to still reflect while you know, I'm talking, and then we can kind of move on to the next part. But I was experiencing terrible sleep patterns this whole week, and we are in the height of our busy season at work, and I was not getting sleep, and I was not able to show up with the focus that I wanted to show up to my work, especially because we're so busy. And so I was beating myself up for days, like, oh my God, I'm not sleeping and I'm stressed out, and then I'm having anxiety, and it was like this cycle, like I was going in, and didn't take a moment. And we'll go through these techniques. Me and Yasmin will go through them in a second, just to ask myself, like, okay, what do I need in this moment, and show myself some compassion. Instead, I was getting so frustrated. Like, of course it's December, I'm fundraising and I cannot sleep. Like, of course this is happening, you know? And so I ended up showing myself some compassion and talking to my supervisor and being really honest about where I was at, which was really hard for me. And I took a walk that day because it was really nice in Chicago, which is not common in December. And I was able to, you know, reset to where I needed to be, and actually was a lot better today. So that's just an instance that I went through to share with you all. But hopefully, inshallah, by now you've been able to journal about your own. So we want you to keep that in mind, because I'm going to go through a technique in a second where you can implement self-compassion in these scenarios. So we have some tools for you guys. It wouldn't be a webinar if we weren't sending you home with some concrete tools. So the first thing you can do is ask yourself how you would talk to a friend. So you just journaled about some mistake that you made, a situation you weren't proud of. Imagine your friend made that mistake. How would you respond to them? And just think about that for a second. Take a second to think about that. If a friend came up to you and said, hey, I had this situation, and they told you the scenario you journaled about, what would your response to them be? All right, we're going to put a poll up. So we want to hear this, actually. We want to see, was your response to your friend different than your response to yourself? So go ahead and answer. Was your response to your friend in your head different than your response to yourself? Looks like 58% of folks voted. Let's wait till we get a couple more in. All right, looks like we need just 5 more. So I'm going to give you a few more seconds to chime in, and then we'll end the poll. Okay. Did the poll stop?
Yes. So
Perfect.
It's showing 77% said yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so we're seeing that 77% of folks, which are most of the folks, said that they would respond to a friend differently. And this is actually pretty typical, right? So with our friends, we're able to identify, or our loved ones, a mom, whoever, we're able to identify they're human. You make mistakes, right? It's easy to see their humanity. But oftentimes with ourselves, because we're so inside of ourselves, we don't afford ourselves the same compassion. So it's a great technique. It's actually the technique I first started using when I was really trying to get control of my thoughts and what I was telling myself. I would stop and be like, Aisha, how would you respond to a friend? You just fell down this train stairs. Like, I would not tell a friend, oh my God, you're so embarrassing. How could you do that? I would say, hey, Aisha, are you okay? Right? So treating ourselves with the same kindness that we treat people in our lives. And that's an easy way to like trigger us to think about how those two things are different.
Okay, thank you, Aisha, for that beautiful reminder. I always need that every day. I need that reminder. So the second tool that we wanted to share with you is to self-soothe. So one easy way to care and comfort ourselves when we're feeling badly is to give ourselves supportive touch. So touch helps our bodies calm down and feel safe. And as humans, we're wired to, we need it. So it might feel a little awkward or embarrassing at first, but your body doesn't know that. It just responds to the physical gesture of warmth and care, just as a baby responds positively to being cuddled with its mom when it's upset. So research shows that when we provide ourselves physical touch, it releases oxytocin in our body, which makes us feel safe and soothes the distressing emotions like fear, anxiety, sadness, hurt. So let's try some together. So the first one is a self-hug. So you just put your arms around yourself as if you're giving yourself a hug. And you can squeeze your arms or rub them, whatever feels nice. And just notice the effect it has on your body. Like I said, it could be awkward at first, but trust me, such a great tool. Especially during COVID when we can't always hug other people. The next one is to put your hand over your heart. So go ahead and try that if you're willing. And another technique is to put 2 hands over your heart. I really like this one. I find myself doing it throughout the day just to stay calm and remind myself, I'm okay, I'm okay. And it's interesting how and other ones could be like cradling your face in your hands or putting your hands on your stomach, whatever works for you. And it's interesting how even in Islam, like sometimes when we make dua, we find ourselves putting our hands, our face in our hands, right? And when we're praying, we have our hands over our heart or on our knees when we're bending down. So these tools are kind of built into our faith. Other ways you could self-soothe could be wrapping yourself in your favorite cozy blanket and whatever works for you. These tools are just like, trust yourself because you are your best teacher on what works best for you.
Thank you, Yasmin. Yeah, one of my favorite self-soothing techniques is taking a hot bath. The warm water, it just makes me feel really good. Okay. The next thing, which is one of my favorite techniques ever, I am an avid journaler. So write yourself a letter. So we just left an activity here. We're not going to do it together, but maybe something you all can try on your own time. Good idea is to write a letter to yourself that describes a situation that caused you to feel pain. So that could be a breakup with a life partner or a friend, a job loss, a conflict with somebody you love. And see if you can write that letter without judging your feelings or without judging yourself, and instead just naming your feelings. So that might look like, I am so sad, the situation made me feel hurt, rather than I'm so stupid, I felt hurt, I shouldn't have trusted them, right? It's removing the judgment and instead just saying, I'm sad, I was feeling hurt, and just acknowledging how you're feeling. And really where this is supposed to help in that diagram that Yasmin showed was in that mindfulness, being able to just identify, like, sometimes when we're feeling a lot of things, it's hard to even know why you're feeling that way. You're just feeling the emotions. So journaling, as well as all these other techniques that we've been going through, are really to take a step back and think about why you're actually feeling what you're feeling, to encourage mindfulness. So feel free to do that after this or in a time of need. It's not going to the next slide. Oh. It really jumped. Okay. And then the next tip is just to ask, what do I need right now? So in the example that I shared about me struggling with work this week, right? When I was not taking a second to think about what I needed, I was like running around, I was beating myself up for feeling anxiety and anxious and not getting sleep and just like doing the things without taking a second to identify what I needed. I was completely depleting my energy and not able to actually address what was happening and what I needed, right? So when I took a moment to really ask myself, like, what do I need in this moment? What I needed was compassion for myself, right? And I needed the folks that I was working with to understand what was happening because I was feeling shame around that. So by doing those two things, compassion for myself, saying, Aisha, this is just a moment, it will pass, you will get through this. And then also reaching out to loved ones. And it's Yasmin's point, you know, mental health is not something that we have to struggle through alone. So to reach out to my colleagues and be like, hey, I need your support in this, really helped prepare me to come to this day a lot better and to be able to put more into my work because I wasn't so frazzled by the emotions I was feeling. So checking in with yourself and just saying, what do I need? Is it a hug from myself? Do I need a warm cup of tea to soothe me? Do I need to go outside for a breath of fresh air because I've been stuck inside and we're in the middle of a global pandemic? Whatever you need in that moment, just taking that time for yourself to give it to, identify it and then give it to yourself.
Awesome. So we're going to practice the last technique that we're sharing, which is the self-compassion break. And this can be used in your life whenever you encounter any challenging moments or whether it's emotional, mental, spiritual, physical. And what's awesome about this is you could do it in like within 30 seconds or within 20 minutes, however much you want and need. So the reason I have these ingredients up here again is because through this break, we'll be walking through these together. So keeping in mind, we need to be mindful. We need to have self-kindness instead of self-judgment. And we need to remember that we're not alone in this, okay? So I invite you to, and this will just take less than 5 minutes, and then we'll close out. But I invite you to just either gently close your eyes or lower your gaze from the screen and plant your feet on the floor, just grounding yourself in this present moment. We have so much going on in our lives. Our thoughts can be racing at times, but just really allowing ourselves to, for a few minutes to just be. Taking a few deep breaths. Nice deep breaths. And as you continue to just gently breathe, I also invite you to use a self-soothing touch which feels good to you, whether it's hugging yourself or my favorite go-to, just putting your hands over your heart. Please try that out and keep that for yourself for the next few minutes. See how it feels to just engage in that caring touch for yourself. And as you continue breathing, please go ahead and think of something that's kind of bothering you. It could be even just what you reflected on a few moments ago, the mistake you made, or something that's troubling you. Just choose one thing. And since we're practicing for the first time, let's not have it be something too overwhelming, just a small mistake. And visualize it in your mind's eye. What's the setting? What's happening in the situation? And see if you can feel in your body the discomfort as you think about this. And now with your self-soothing touch, say to yourself gently, this is a moment of difficulty, or this is hard. And difficulties are part of life. I'm not alone. Just like me, everyone feels sad or scared or anxious. And so may I be kind to myself in this moment. Really seeing if you can respond to your challenge with kindness, care, and feeling your self-soothing touch. May I be kind to myself. May I give myself the compassion that I need right now. May I accept myself just as I am. And if that feels too hard, you can use this time to make dua to Allah. Like, oh Allah, please help me get through this time. Because we really can't do anything alone. Keep breathing. And once again, repeat to yourself that this is a moment of difficulty, and difficulties are a part of life. May I be kind to myself. So go ahead and take a few more deep breaths. Allowing yourself to soak up the self-compassion and remember that it's there for you at all times. And when you're ready, you can just come back to the Zoom room.
Thank you so much for leading that for us, Yasmin. I see in the chat box that someone joined late and they wanted us to review the techniques. We will do that in one moment, so just hang tight. Hopefully that was helpful for you all. I feel like my voice is even a little bit lower, like I'm not screaming at the screen anymore. I just feel a lot calmer. So thank you for leading us in that. All right, so we have another poll for you because we love engagement. Inshallah, this has given you a lot to think about, and whether you're new here and it's planting a seed for you to start your journey, whether it's planting the seed to deepen your journey, whatever it is, we hope it was helpful for you. And we kind of want to get an idea of where folks are at. So we know that our emotions, you're not just feeling one thing at a time sometimes, but what is most present for you? We want you to vote what zone you're in. So you'll see that there's different feelings associated with different colors here. So what color is your feeling falling under? And you should see the poll pop up on your screen in a second. There it is. Go ahead and vote.
And as we're waiting for our last votes to come in, this is another way we can check in with ourselves, like just knowing what zone we're in. Are we in the green, feeling happy and calm? or if we're more in the yellow or red, what do we need to take care of ourselves? So we just wanted to check in with you. A few more people.
All right.
We'll end the poll.
Perfect. So we see that 50% of folks are in the blue, sick, sad, tired, bored, moving slowly. Totally okay. Those emotions are okay too. Something I like to tell myself is all of our emotions are trying to tell us something so we can take care of ourselves. So there are no such thing as a bad emotion. Green, we have about 33 or a third of us that are feeling happy, calm, feeling okay, focused, and ready to learn. And we have some folks also in the yellow. So frustrated, worried, silly wiggly, excited, or a loss of some control. Again, all of these things are okay. There's no right or wrong answer. And inshallah, you'll have a second tonight to ask yourself, what do you need? And on that note, we just briefly want to go over the techniques we talked about today. And I think I'm hitting it too much, so it might jump ahead again, but having some technical difficulties. Yes, it did. All right. So the tools were talk to yourself the way that you would talk to a friend or a loved one. So that's just asking yourself, would I respond to a friend the same way that I'm responding to myself right now? And if the answer is no, maybe adjusting to be kinder to yourself. Self-soothe. So Yasmin talked about hugging yourself, putting your hand over your heart or over your stomach, breathing, taking a bath, even lighting a candle, something that makes you feel calm and centered. Asking yourself, what do I need right now? So just checking in. Hey, I'm feeling sad. What do I need right now? I think it's a walk to get some fresh air. Can do wonders for your day. There's one missing. It was write yourself a letter. So this is journaling. Just reflect on how you're feeling without judging how you're feeling. So I'm sad. I'm feeling this way. This happened, rather than I'm so stupid. Why did I do this? Etc. And then the self-compassion break, which Yasmin just walked us through a few moments ago. Great. Awesome. So these are just some resources that we put up for you all. Selfcompassion.org is a great website for you to check out that has a lot of awesome information and some resources there. There is a TED Talk. So if you go onto YouTube and just type in the title of this TED Talk, you should be able to find it right away. The Space Between Self-Esteem and Self-Compassion by Dr. Neff. The Gift of Imperfections is one of my favorite books. It's actually what launched my self-love journey by Brene Brown. She's a fantastic researcher that has a lot of research to back up shame and compassion, and how shame actually doesn't allow us to connect with others, and how compassion and vulnerability are truly the ingredients to connection and fulfillment. And then Reclaim Your Heart by Yasmin Irfani. I don't know how to say her last name. And I believe that's a book. Is that right, Yasmin? Awesome.
Yes, it's amazing.
Awesome. These are all just resources if you want to deepen your, again, just additional things you can add to your journey of self-compassion and self-love. And of course, there are tons of other resources out there. This list is not comprehensive. So maybe drop in the chat box if there's an awesome resource that you've accessed recently around this topic, so other folks can also benefit from it. All right. And I think it's going to switch to the next thing, but I think we're going into the Q&A next, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Aisha and Yasmin. And Aisha, I wanted to turn back and say sorry for throwing that curveball, but you did it. I mean, you handled it so gracefully, sharing your own thing. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to hand over the panelist Q&A to Vagma and invite and thank Anisa, Hawa, and Asma for joining us. I also wanted to introduce Omar, who very patiently always navigates everything for us. Omar, if you want to do your introduction, and then we'll move to Vagma to coordinate the, to lead the Q&A with the panelists.
Unmuted. Anyways, my name is Omar Rauf. I am on the board, one of the founding board members of the Utah Muslim Civic League. Also, as Luna mentioned, I like to work behind the scenes and pick up wherever we need help. So that's in kind of marketing and whatever it is, help with events and whatnot. But anyways, I'd just like to thank our panel for being here for that great presentation. Is very helpful and very insightful. So thank you everyone for being here.
Assalamu alaikum again. First of all, Yasmin and Aisha, thank you for the amazing talk. It's something that you reminded me of what I'm constantly doing, self-criticizing all the time. And especially when I'm seeing patients, I feel like all that compassion my patients deserve, and I forget about myself throughout the day. And so that's a good reminder for myself. So I want to introduce our Q&A panelists. And just a quick brief introduction of yourself, please. And then talk about how can we take the topic of self-compassion and kind of integrate that into our community, and how does that kind of apply to us in our Salt Lake community? So Asma Hassan, do you want to start first?
Okay, yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Yasmin and Aisha. I thought this was such a great reminder, and I feel so much calmer. And so in my work, I work with college students, and they just had finals. And so this is like a good time for them to like practice self-compassion, especially this fall semester. It's been very challenging. And so I think, so yeah, wait, okay, I'm having like a, what was the other part, Okma?
If you had any questions, or if you wanted to give some input of how like we can use the concept of self-compassion for our local community here in Salt Lake from what you've seen and witnessed.
Thank you about that. Sorry, I'm like really tired, I think. I think one question I had was related to what you mentioned earlier about how I think culturally, you know, we think emotions means weakness, or we try to bypass our emotions through spiritual acts. So could you talk about how we can, you know, do the spiritual acts to be self-compassionate, but then also other ways that we can take care of ourselves? So.
That's a really great point, Asma. And in fact, next week, our webinar is on managing emotions. So as Aisha said, each emotion does have a purpose, and you really have to feel it to heal it. Like that's the motto I think everyone should take. You feel it to heal it, let it through, or it gets repressed in our body and then can erupt later on. And another tip that I like to share is what you resist will persist. So the more we avoid and run away from things we don't want to face, the more it comes into our faces. So I don't know if I have the perfect answer. I really believe each person is their own best teacher in terms of what works for me spiritually, what do I like to do, and what helps me emotionally, physically, all these things. So that's just what I wanted to input, but Aisha, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I like to think of managing my emotions as this toolbox, right? And I don't have really a better word for it, but that's the thing that I'm thinking about at the moment. And my spirituality and my relationship with Allah is one thing in that toolbox, right? And then there are all these other things that I have that help me feel more whole as a person. So that could look like contacting a friend or my mom, who I'm very close with, and talking about my day and walking through it. I go to therapy every week. So it might be talking to my therapist, which I know is not as accessible to everybody. So that might not be the solution for you. But all these different things. So I think I've, on my journey, have had to figure out, like, what are some things that I know in a moment of crisis I can kind of tap into to make myself feel better. And sometimes a bath is really soothing for me. Other times it actually gives me anxiety. So I think it's checking in with myself at that moment and asking myself what I need. But I think with self-compassion and spirituality, something interesting that I've been experiencing on my own spiritual journey, which is a lifelong journey, just like our journey with ourselves and self-love, is that oftentimes when I'm not shaming myself and I'm able to process my emotions in a healthy way and show compassion for myself, I'm able to show up to my relationship to Allah and Islam without that shame. So in that book that I mentioned, The Secrets of Divine Love, it's a beautiful resource. And there might be some things you can find online about that. But she talks about this idea that, you know, we are really the ones putting barriers between us and like this fulfillment in our spiritual relationship. And I would fall into the habit of being the like not Muslim enough, the non-deserving, you know, Muslim, like God, like I made this mistake and God must not love me. And what we know is that God's compassion is infinite, right? My dad and my mom used to tell me like Allah is more forgiving than your own mother. And I think about all the stuff that I put my mom through and I'm like, wow, like that's a lot. So I think that I try to think of that too when I'm using that toolbox, even if sometimes it's not dua, if it's not you know, different spiritual practices, that even calling a friend, talking to my mom, talking to my therapist is in service of that spiritual practice, because it allows me to show up on that prayer mat and actually be able to be present in that in spiritual practice. So that's something I like to think of, that those things kind of go hand in hand for me. So when I'm focusing on the other methods and tools that make me feel whole, I'm able to show up to that spiritual practice and be more fulfilled and healed after it.
Thank you so much.
All right, Anissa, do you want to go next?
Yes. So hi guys. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Anissa Dahir. One thing that I've learned this year with everything going on with COVID and the Black Lives Matter movement and all of the atrocities that happened this year was that and with COVID and the first wave and being in our first quarantine and social isolation, I really decided to be present with myself. And with being present, I've noticed all of this self-hate talk that I've been telling myself throughout the years, but I didn't feel the weight and the severity of it until I was present with myself. And when I realized that I need to practice my self-love. And so I started implementing some word affirmations and practicing some self-care in that sense. And I feel like with self-compassion, it really coincides with your self-love. And in order to be compassionate to yourself, you have to love yourself. You have to appreciate your well-being and treat yourself as if like you are the best version of yourself. And so I feel like those two really coincide. And so my question to you guys is, how do you practice your self-love with also practicing your self-compassion? And what are ways to practice both to both amplify each other and connect the two?
Do you want to kick us off, Yasmin, or do you want me to start?
Whatever you want.
Go ahead, why don't you kick
I love you, Aisha. Wow, Anissa, I'm like blown away by your reflection on yourself, and thank you for sharing that. Whew, your question, yeah, the way I see it, I think self-compassion and self-love are like interrelated, at least for me. And when you mentioned the self-hate, like that hit me, because most of my life I've been so mean to myself, and I still, the inner child in me, the little Yasmin, gets scared. Like, what if people talk about me? What if they judge me? And I have to comfort her and say, no, we're okay, we're safe, like it's all good, you know? So I think that it's, for me, it's moment to moment. What do I need right now? Is it like a sip of water? Do I need to take a breath? And some days are harder than others, especially with COVID. I think earlier this year, I actually had gotten COVID, and it just woke me up to life, where I'm like, oh my God, death can come at any moment. So I think that also motivated me that, okay, you know what? I'm not going to beat myself up so much when life is so short, and I cannot achieve my goals. I can't help anyone if I'm just sitting here being so mean. So that's just what came to me right now. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Yasmin. I think talking to our inner child, man, that's a journey. So much there. But something I was thinking of, I agree. I think that self-compassion is a form of self-love. So when we're able to show ourselves compassion, it's really an act of love. And I think about, I have 2 nephews and a niece, and the oldest nephew, Noah, he's 5, and he is hyper, like has so much energy. If I just had a fraction of that, I would be set for life. And I think when I'm in moments of high stress, I can get really impatient with him, you know, or if he makes a mistake, you know, kids make mistakes, and I'm able to be like, it's okay, Noah, like you're a kid, you know, it's okay, you spilled the milk, it's fine. That's an act of love from me, right? So I think it goes back to this idea of like how, like even asking yourself, how do you show people in your life love, right? Sometimes forgiving another person is an act of love. Allah forgiving us is an act of love. So forgiveness looks like forgiving yourself for your mistakes. It looks like talking to yourself nicely. It looks like, you know, I think part of my self-love was being like, hey, I want to get to know that person. Like, she seems interesting. So sitting with yourself and journaling and understanding more about yourself. And I think the further you deeper that journey with yourself and really be rooted in this idea of self-worth, right? In that same book, she talks about how like Allah created us perfectly. We were all born worthy. And this moment, whatever you're called to show up for, you are worthy of that. So really having this sense of like wholeness and I am worthy in this moment. There are tons of things I can work on. There's, you know, I can strengthen my relationship with myself and others. I can show up better to work tomorrow. But in this moment, I am completely and 100% worthy. That's not a question. And I think really becoming firmer in that belief, because I think that, you know, logically I can believe that, but like then in practice, sometimes it looks so different, really becoming firmer in that belief. So I can really say, I am worthy of this. I'm worthy of that walk outside. I'm worthy of the breath. I'm worthy of the support of another person. It does not make me weak. I think has been really critical for my self-love. I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you, guys.
Hawa, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you, Yasmin and Aisha, for the presentation. For me, myself, during this time, it's kind of rough. I working as like a community health worker and helping those families out during this time is kind of, you know, it's emotionally taxing. And so having this presentation sort of brings back reflections on myself, because, you know, I tend to, you know, repress my feelings and just not really work on those emotions. And so a questions that I have for you guys is, how do you guys be in the present? Because I think when I think of self-compassion is being in the present and not focusing on like mistakes that you've made in the past or focusing on the uncertainty of the future. I think being in the present and focusing on what you can do now is the biggest way to support yourself and use self-compassion towards yourself. But just how do you guys suggest working on that present moment for yourself?
Thank you, Hawa, for all that you do in your community and for just having that awareness to share that you do repress your emotions. We all do at times, so thank you. For me, with the present moment, oh, I completely forgot what I was going to say, but let's see if it comes back. I think I'm grateful to COVID for forcing me to be in the present moment as much as I can. Oh, this is what came. I don't know if anyone's seen Frozen 2. Anyone? Raise your hand if you have. So in that, there's a song where she says, just do the next right thing. And it's so deep, so profound. In fact, I think that song is about mental health, like, because she seems to be going through grief and depression and all of this. And that's what I try to tell myself. I'm like, okay, just do the next right thing right now. I'm here with you. Forget about everything else. But I have to say, it's hard. So I'm not going to act like I have it all together. It's, I think, part of the common humanity piece, but that little slogan helps me. And also just remembering death. I think in Islam, we're encouraged to think about death, even though in our society, it's kind of like, oh, taboo. But that also reminds me to really cherish the moment and be with all of you right now for the common intention of healing and love. So thanks.
Thank you, Yasmin. I need to obviously watch Frozen 2. I am a mind wanderer. My mind is literally going 100 miles per hour before I go to bed. In my dreams, I have like vivid dreams. I feel like my mind is always going. So this is something that I've actually struggled a lot with. And it's funny, I was sitting at a park with a friend once, and I had this like thing that I was doing in the summer where I would go and put a blanket out underneath a tree and just read a book. And I would listen to the sounds of the birds, and I wouldn't put my headphones in and things like that. And I was telling her while we're sitting at this park, usually I would do it alone, but she came this day. And I was like, yeah, I have such a hard time with meditation. Like I cannot sit still and think about, like, just be present, because that's what meditation asks you to do, like keep your mind in the present moment. And she's like, Aisha, I think that you, like, this is your way of meditating. When you show up to the park and you're just listening to the birds, right? Or you're looking at the ducks, or you're just feeling the wind, being in that, that's what the present moment is. So I think my advice, or how I think of this, is like, oftentimes we're like given this like one size fits all solution to being present in the moment, but maybe think of times where you felt the most connected or the most present, and like, what are you doing then? And kind of try to incorporate more of that into your life. And I know there's different techniques. You can even look at like YouTube videos where they'll ask you to like identify 5 things you can see, like 5 things you can touch, you know, what smells, and that kind of pulls you into the present moment as well. But I think the struggle is so real for all of us, especially now when I think there's heightened levels of anxiety with all of us, because we're, you know, experiencing a very traumatic thing. You know, Luna, you said that like some of us are settling into this moment of the pandemic, and it's almost weird to think about that, like how normal it almost feels now. So I think that we're still not in a normal situation, right? And as you said, there were a lot of intersecting tragedies that were happening this year with the pandemic, with the uprisings and the racial injustice in the country. So I think that it's showing compassion for ourselves, that it's so understandable that our minds are wandering, that we can't be present. And then even just noticing, when are the moments I feel the most present, and what am I doing in those moments, and inviting more of that into your life. Because I'm sure there are little moments where you're already doing that you can just invite more of and make space for in your life.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Do any of the panelists have anything to add before we go on to Q&A from the audience?
I did want to say one more thing about that you guys mentioned earlier, which was like so profound. When you talked about the hadith about like being merciful to others, I loved, you know, that caveat about like that includes ourselves. And so now I'm thinking of that hadith differently, and it's just another reason to remember to be merciful to ourselves. I loved that, you know. So.
And just to chime in a little bit with the self-compassion, I see a lot of patients dealing with depression, anxiety, right? And because of the pandemic and everything. And like you were mentioning, the stress has just heightened so much. And I think it's just giving that affirmation to people that it's okay to feel this way, right? It's normal to feel this way. And I think everybody's like you guys were mentioning, is they're pretty critical with themselves of, why am I feeling this way? Why am I super sad? And just kind of giving that affirmation. It's like, it's okay, you feel that way. You know, there's a lot going on in this world right now. So, which actually brings me to the topic of a question that the audience, one of the audience members put out there. And I'm just going to paraphrase, is how do you handle stress and depression with all the atrocities happening around the world and with self-isolation? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's hard. I don't know if there's ever a moment where I feel like I'm dealing with it perfectly, because there are just so many atrocities in the world. And I think of, you know, there's this one author, Adrienne Marie Brown, who I'm a huge fan of. And I think my approach to, I've been in the social justice space for a while, and my approach before was like always feeling like I needed to make the biggest impact ever. and needing to fix everything in the world. And that's just impossible. We know that like these issues are probably going to exist beyond our lifetime. And she talks about change like in fractals. So how change in like just by us changing ourselves automatically shifts things around us. So if I'm again coming to myself with compassion and wholeness, I'm able to offer that to other people, which might inspire them to like offer that to themselves, right? It becomes this compounding effect, and we automatically change the environments we in by making just these little small changes. So I think I like to think of, to address or like to confront all of my anxieties about the atrocities that way. Like Allah gave me a specific gift to execute on this earth. And as long as I'm getting to know myself and aligning myself with that purpose, that is all I'm meant to do. I'm not meant to end oppression all around the world. I'm meant to contribute to it. But I think that helps me feel, you know, and I don't think there's ever feeling ease. You know, it's just, it makes me feel like a little, like one foot in front of the other. Like Yasmin said, like it's day by day, and just being able to make it through a day and feeling like I contributed to the world in a positive way, and being okay with that and not needing to feel like I need to fix everything. Yasmin, I'll let you add anything you want.
Yeah, no, I love what you just shared, Aisha. And this question is so hard. As a highly sensitive person and an empath, I find myself very easily getting drained by everything going on in the world. But I realized that time and energy, I can convert it into actually a force of good. Even if that's a few people in my community, it's better than me holding up myself, like isolating myself in my room and just wondering, why am I so privileged? Why do I have all these things when other people don't? Why do all these questions, right? So I think that I really like the concept that when one thing in the system changes, it changes the whole system. So if I am the one thing I have control over, and I am working on myself, going to therapy or crying if I need to, whatever it is, then I am indirectly somehow, my energy is more helpful to other people as well. So it all goes back to self-compassion. I feel like self-compassion is this umbrella under which everything falls. And that's all I can really say to that.
All right, I think I don't see any more questions coming in, but I did want to point out a couple of resources for those looking for a therapist. If you have a private insurance, you can go to psychologytoday.com, put in your insurance information in the search bar and also your zip code, and a ton of social workers and therapists will pop up. And the cool thing about it is you'll see their picture, you'll see a description of them, and you can even call them and ask for a phone interview to see if you and the therapist are a good fit with each other. And some therapists are willing to do that free of charge just to see if you're a good fit. And because of the pandemic, a lot of this will be through Zoom. So you will feel safe. And on the Facebook page and on Instagram, we'll put out resources of therapists that accept Medicaid and those who are uninsured. So we'll have that available as well. And if there aren't any more questions, Yasmin or Aisha, do you want to just briefly talk about the next topic? Yasmin, if you want to talk about the next topic, that's next week, so people can tune in and know what's happening.
Yes, so next week is a webinar called Managing the Roller Coaster of Emotions. So we thought it'd be nice to start with self-compassion. It's like very nice and gentle. And next week, we'll be sharing some tools on how to manage the 5 primary emotions that all humans have, because we're all feeling them right now. So stay tuned for that.
Luna, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Wagma. Thank you, each one of you. You guys are so sort of full of love. The way you share yourself with the world, each one of you, it is a reflection of the goodness that we see around us. I do want to bring in one of my favorite quotes. You know, when you are at the age that I am, when you're not where you guys are, you know, that idealistic, but you're not kind of over the hill too, and you can kind of see both ends. I think I refer to my favorite authors as Mr. or Miss as if they're my teachers. So Miss Brown, whose book you had mentioned, one of her quote was, "Staying vulnerable is a risk we have to take if we want to experience connection." And I think that's the lesson that we want to take home today, and hopefully come back next week to explore and to understand our own vulnerabilities, how to manage them, and how to share the love that we have for each other and our community. So once again, all of you have a great night. All of you that tuned in, have a great night. Stay safe, and please practice the techniques that were given to you. It might be wonderful if you wanted to come back and share what you learned. And we're looking forward to next week again at the same time, same place. And hopefully we can have both Yasmin and Aisha again in the future in January next year or sometime to kind of round off our discussion. It's a lot to put this information out there, but then it's also very important to close it up, to share that experience or things that we learn from each other. And once again, our panelists, are local. You guys have an absolutely open door with us anytime you want to join us, anytime you want to make an outreach to us. Thank you, each one of you. And Omar, thank you for your patience with everything, all the hullabaloo in the back. Everyone, have a great night. Take care.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be in space with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.